The Positive Pause is a motivational-minded podcast covering topics women want to know about as they journey to and through menopause, focusing on subjects that impact women's health and healthy aging, including what it means to age healthfully. The Positive Pause features experts and influencers from a variety of industries and specialties. The information and opinions expressed on the Positive Pause are not intended to replace the services of trained professionals or to provide specific medical advice. To see the National Menopause Foundation's full medical disclaimer, please visit nationalmenopausefoundation.org.
Welcome to the Positive Pause. I'm Claire Gill, founder of the National Menopause Foundation. Joining me today are EJ Kim and Marina Penn, co-founders of NNABI, NNABI, the Peri company. They created the first ever perimenopause dedicated company. Their goal is to revolutionize the way that women experience perimenopause. EJ's personal struggles with perimenopause led her to seek out natural, evidence-based solutions. That solution became NNABI, which means butterfly in Korean, a brand created to educate and empower women through one of the most transformative stages of their lives. EJ is passionate about redefining the conversation around perimenopause and ensuring that women are understood, seen, and recognized for the power they hold. When Maria began experiencing anxiety, sleepless nights, and mood swings, she discovered it wasn't stress, it was perimenopause. Surprised by how little conversation and guidance existed, she turned frustration into purpose, and she joined forces with her friend and co-founder EJ to create NNABI to redefine how women experience this stage of life through science, sisterhood, and strength. Both EJ and Marina have been recognized among the 200 trailblazing leaders in women's health and femtech, honoring their work to advance visibility, innovation, and empowerment for women in perimenopause. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us, Claire.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so let's dive in. So prior to founding your company, what did you know about perimenopause and how much information on the subject was really available?
Well, yeah, honestly, very, very little, practically nothing. When I first started experiencing symptoms around the age of 38, I was not aware that this could be anything related to hormones. And again, symptoms started really, really low, like very, just quietly building up into my 40s. And then it felt scarier as they grew louder, like brain fog, sleeplessness, waking up at 3 a.m., panic attacks, feeling very overwhelmed. So really what was happening, I could not understand that it was hormonal, much less perimenopause, that there was a word. And from my personal experience, which I understand is the experience of so many women, the conversation jumped from fertility and pregnancy, which I had experienced or was going through at the time, into menopause. And there was this massive gap that is a decade or more long. And it was absolutely missing, invisible. There was no education, no guidance, no products, nothing. No doctors talking about it, no one mentioning it. So really, that's what set us up. But going back to your question, there was nothing out there, no information for.
It's so funny, especially as you said, when you were 38, right? That is not when we think about menopause either, right? Everyone thinks it's old women and have no idea that the perimenopause transition starts so many years earlier, right? Yeah. And EJ, was yours the same?
Yeah. And I think people often ask us, like, when did you know? Because it's one of those things that there's no black and white, like you don't like pee on a stick and say, hey, you're in perimenopause. There's no such thing. So now that we've been working on this project for a long time, we've kind of been looking back and like, what are the moments? And I think that's why Marina is going back and said, like, she was 38. I was 37. And I had a funny episode where I get a haircut like every 8 weeks or so. And so this person's been seeing me for a very long time and quite often. And I do remember she was asking me if I was pregnant. And because my texture of hair changed, and I thought it was just like bad New York weather, but it wasn't actually that. So something fundamentally changed. And I think I was feeling more, I think hormones are always in us. So it's been playing tricks on us for a long time, but I think that kind of getting into the perimenopause and all of a sudden this, not only sort of hair, but then acne was coming back. So I had some severe acne situation. And then like hair loss, like, there's a severe hair loss that was happening on top of like the extreme mood swings. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm Cancer because I'm moody. But no, there was another level of moodiness that was like, I was never feeling this way. And the sense of overwhelmingness. I never used to say I'm overwhelmed. I thought that I was that woman who could do multiple things. And I think a lot of people talk to us about, I can cook your meal and check my emails and But a lot of people entering Peri say, I can't multitask anymore like I used to. And those are some of the things that I think collection looking back started at 37. And, at the time, like when we both were talking about menopause, because that's the word that we're familiar with, we heard about that. So we thought that there was like certain persona, if you will, women in a certain age looking certain way, right? That must be menopause. That's what we thought. It was not us. But then when we dig into the sort of actual what menopause meant, we're like, what? It's only one day? You haven't had your menstruation for 12 consecutive months, but leading up to there is such a thing called perimenopause. That was like ding, ding, ding. I think we were just looking at each other and be like, whoa. And not only we're in it, but that's like a new vocabulary. It didn't really exist. And this we're talking about 6 years ago. So now you think that you're hearing more about perimenopause. 6 years ago, even doctors were not talking about it. And actually, we recently looked at the Google search over time, how often people have been looking at this word from 5 years ago. I mean, it was like 490%, of people now searching for perimenopause. But 6 years ago, Claire, I mean, you can also agree that like that word perimenopause was really not a vocabulary. But now we're here. People are more curious and understanding. And I think we're that sort of new generation of women. I think we're trying to live not like our mothers. How do we take care of ourselves? And we have more knowledge, access to information, and means to take care of ourselves in a different way than our previous generations. So here we are, and we're going all in perimenopause. And I know we'll talk about this in a bit, but it's a very long station. That happens naturally, and we're in it. And often people don't know it, and they'll find out, shockingly. So that's why we really felt passionate about going all in. And wanted to start as a first, like education first company. We wanted to bring a lot of education that's credible and also filtered, because we were a little bit angry about this whole peri/menopause. Women don't experience it like that, but then not a lot of products or solutions even or services, but then they were all just like menopause. It just confused people like us. And we didn't want to accept that. And that's what we mean by redefining and revolutionizing the experience of modern women that we are in Peri. We reject how it used to be. And how do we bring more clarity? Because we want to take better care of ourselves. And it starts with education, credible information, and solutions that's specific for this phase, not like this lazy narrative that we were just given and we just kind of had to accept in the past.
Well, it was very much a medical term, right? Even menopause. And I remember when I founded the National Menopause Foundation, people have said to me, well, two things they wanted me to address: rebrand menopause and solve ageism. And I was like, sure, I'll get on that. No problem. But obviously, those two things are really important, right? There does need to sort of be a rebrand because no one knows what menopause really is. We said this life stage versus the clinical term of your period ends for 12 consecutive months. That's it. And so perimenopause, if clinicians know about it, then they were talking about it, but only as a medical term. So it's how do we talk about the menopausal journey that is perimenopause and postmenopause and that kind of stuff. And so you've done a great job explaining why perimenopause mattered so much to you and why you were all in on that. So I totally see that. And right, as much as we're talking about menopause in general, and that's getting a lot of attention, there needs to be a lot more conversation around those stages, right? And, we declared Perimenopause Awareness Month for September with our partners at Peri, which is another online community that's focused on perimenopause. And the idea is that, right, we need to sort of prepare women for what comes first.
That's right.
And then talk about menopause and then talk about postmenopause, right? It's all the same linear transition a woman is going through. So we need to make sure we kind of experience it all.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your Peri Power report. right? And when did you create this, and what is it, and what is it designed to reveal?
The Peri Power Report. So as we talked about the Peri, going all in on Peri and talking about this woman and then giving this woman the right reflection of who she really is was really important to us. And we look at ourselves, our friends, and then our network of people. And one thing that we realized is that, of course, there are symptoms. So there's that. But then we were all very inspired by this women in perimenopause. There were doers, makers, and builders, and they're CEO of their households, or they have their own business. I mean, there are just so many things that these women are doing. And I also, while they're taking care of their own family and also taking care of the elderly parents. And there were just a lot that she was doing. And also from our own data work, 4 out of 10 women in US in Peri are breadwinners. So we're kind of thinking about how much that's on her shoulder and knowing that there's a lot that she's getting through because she has to do it all while she's going through this sort of perimenopause, aka second puberty. We thought that, wow, this woman's amazing. We need to celebrate this, but in a way that we really want to pronounce the power that she has. Because I think sometimes that the power, or they even just believe that how much power this woman has, is deemed because there's a lot else is happening. So for us, from the start of NNABI, we really wanted to always double down on that power aspect. So this has been something we've been working on for like past 2 years, from a concepting and things like that. But then we were able to finally, on the day of actually the Perimenopause Awareness Day this year, we published this report, and we spoke to 1,000 women in US, 35 to 54, and they are menstruating, regular, irregular. So by definition, they're still in perimenopause. Yeah. And we kind of gone through the journey of like whether they know or not, so we can quantify it. And for us, getting into that, again, very specific to women in perimenopause and getting inside of this cohort was very important because, again, that broader menopause report is helpful to really understand midlife overall. But we really wanted to double click on this woman in perimenopause to understand what are the things that she's experiencing from a symptom perspective, but what kind of supports that she has. And then what are the kind of things she's doing to help herself, knowing that she has a lot to do. But then also, lastly, we really wanted to prove this power of hers. We call it hashtag Peri Power. We really wanted to prove that and validate. And then, so that's why this was so important mission for us to bring that out so that we can give a right reflection of who this woman is. Because right now, I think we are given, again, a few years ago, if you ever put like perimenopause woman in Google search, you'll see this woman who's like having a headache or looking really sad and like very, like the certain image of this woman. But then we look at us and say, well, like, look at all the things we're doing. So again, we really wanted to bring that out so that we are kind of correcting the sort of given media, how we are portrayed. And the narrative around us is not how it's been portrayed, but we can actually bring some data, led by data. We can actually bring out and make people realize what they are and what they look like. And also they're not alone in some of these experiences that they're going through. And then celebrate the amount of power that they have. And we learned some good things, and I know we'll talk about this in a second, but that's why the Peri Power Report was a very big thing for this year for NNABI. And we are so excited to have all this data. Again, just 1,000 women. I mean, that's also scale. So it makes us really feel good to validate our hypothesis. It's not just us believing, just 12 of us or our little soul cohort, but it was actually really proven by data.
That's so important. But first, I love that you're focusing on the power part of it, because I often say that to people too. We talk about the symptoms, and they can be for some women very easy, for some incredibly difficult, but we don't talk enough about how incredible this stage of life really becomes. And when we step into this power that we now have at this stage of life, I think is so important. I also want to let listeners know that we'll be sure to link to the report in the notes of this section so you guys can read the full report. But as you said, I'd love to get some insights on what were the aha moments or the aha outcomes, the shocking kind of things you saw from the report that maybe you didn't expect.
There were a few. I'd start with the most prevalent one that has to do with how many women are living through perimenopause, but they are not realizing that they are in it. So there's this massive awareness gap. We found out that 40% had not even considered perimenopause as a cause of their symptoms.
Wow.
And the women that we spoke to, and I'm talking about 1,000 women in the US that we surveyed, they were on average experiencing 7 perimenopause related symptoms. So they were definitely experiencing some things. They were noticing that there were some things off. However, 4 out of 10 didn't even realize it could be hormonal, much less perimenopause. Some of them did not know the word perimenopause. And only 1 in 10 had a proper doctor diagnosis.
Wow.
So that's 90% of women that are left wondering, unsure, and then a very big chunk of women really not being able to connect the dots.
And so I'm curious, and so like we said, that's huge, right? That 40% had no idea that even though they were experiencing multiple symptoms, that it was related to this menopausal journey. I'm curious if what those symptoms were. Were you able to tease that out? Like, is it just because they didn't get hot flashes and therefore women don't think they're going through perimenopause?
Maybe because there's this prevalent discourse about hot flashes being the indicator.
Right. The only
of
one people know.
Yeah, changes in your body. But like looking at the 7 prevalent symptoms, feeling tired is the first one. Anxiety or nervousness is the second. Difficulty sleeping, aching in muscle and joints, being impatient, feeling or wanting to be alone, poor memory or brain fog, and weight gain or difficulty to lose weight.
So, right.
So those are the 7 that these are self-reported. So we did have a very long list of symptoms, and these are the 7 most prevalent. And if you see there's no hot flashes there, they're mostly psychological, emotional symptoms. That what we found out is that they are not connecting these to hormones, most of them, or many of them, but they're connecting it to stress, burnout. So that was the first place where they went. I'm feeling this way because of my lifestyle. I'm very stressed, and this is what's driving all these symptoms or some of these symptoms. The second one was aging. So this is part of just age, and it comes.
Yeah. Right.
30s, 40s, 50s, and I need to just push through.
But they don't think about that. Something like part of that aging process is the depletion of our hormone, our major mojo, which is estrogen, right? And so I think, again, we're not taught how important estrogen is to the female physiology and how it really impacts everything from our head, like you were saying earlier, EJ, from hair loss, from our head to our toes is impacted by estrogen. And so when that starts to fluctuate rapidly and randomly, it causes a lot of problems. I thought it was also interesting too, like you said, that it's those psychological, physiological kind of combo things that are very confusing. And then we said, right, we're also at peak career performance or raising children or taking care of things. So you think, of course, stress. And that's true, but it's also then coupled with the hormone reduction that makes it so unbelievably profound. And I think one of the other things that's really interesting is the number of women who say, I thought I was going crazy.
Yeah.
Right? That ties into exactly what you're saying, because those are the symptoms that they're experiencing, and not knowing that hormones are playing such a big role in it. They just think, I can't cope, I'm going crazy. And that's so unfortunate.
Yeah. And that's basically what's keeping women confused, because they're not able to connect the dots and they are not able to look for the right solution. So another thing that we found, which is encouraging, is that they are trying solutions. So they are acknowledging these things that are happening in their bodies and they are looking for solutions. However, they are busy just like piecing together things without knowing where this is originated. To your point, there's a lot of changes hormonally happening in your body and these incredible shifts happening with estrogen specifically, and they are making you feel really crappy and you're getting all these symptoms, and then you're piecing together different solutions that might not be what you need.
Right.
What we want to say from an optimistic perspective is that they are not staying still and doing nothing. Yes, they are looking for solutions. However, they're looking in the wrong places because they don't know where this is being originated. So they're chasing symptoms instead of understanding the bigger hormonal picture that's behind what they're experiencing.
Right.
We really believe that they need to stop thinking or feeling that they need to push through and go at it alone and really start. It started with speaking with their doctor, most importantly, and having these conversations early on so they can find the right solutions for what they need.
Yeah.
But part of it is, like you said, finding that community too.
Yeah.
Right. If sometimes just identifying like, oh, this might be it. And oh, wait, there's millions of women who are going through this too.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start talking about it, I think that's what's going to be so interesting for people when they read your report is to see themselves amongst the whole group, right? Like this is really common. And so
absolutely,
sometimes just even knowing that you're not alone in it makes the journey easier, right?
Yeah.
In so many respects.
Yeah, I think that was important for us, that oftentimes that idea of I'm crazy, or people say, oh, you're crazy, or you're hormonal. Like we heard that many times, when it comes to women acting certain way, right? So I think that maybe women are also second guessing themselves. And, this is a personal and private matter. So there is, because to your point, Claire, like people are in the height of their career, right? The peak of their career, they're earning. And so there are a lot that they're doing. So they're not going to almost like volunteer this information. It's almost like a weakness. And again, this is where I think that us starting talking about this as a way to start changing the conversation. But because it's a very personal, private matter, people are so uncomfortable talking about it, but we can't really solve, or even just like knowing that you're not alone, to your point, it gives that relief. But if we don't know that, this is just me or like everyone else going through, and hopefully this report is providing that a bit of that comfort too, that this is normal. You're feeling this way, you're going through some journey of you kind of changing the way you operate, how you are making decisions. And so there's another side of the sort of what's surprising through the report, which we kind of was part of our hypothesis about this whole power shift, is that women are claiming, and as Marina said, like they want their own space, like kind of reclaiming kind of what the space, like what that means, their thinking space or the actual physical space, they're asking for this. But also saying no to some like toxic relationship or things they're not aligned with. And I think that's why, Claire, we see a lot of women in 40s and 50s who say, I actually don't want to continue this career anymore because that's not aligned with my values anymore. Right. Or speaking up more. They feel more comfortable saying what they actually mean versus what they have to say. So these are some of the soft cues. But when you're actually speaking to 1,000 women and you say, wow, these are all the things that how they are making choices, how they choose to spend time.
Yeah.
There is something there. And, it's not being selfish. It's about her operating, having even more clarity than ever before. She may not be actually confused. This is not a chaotic moment of her life. She's actually getting everything in order. And we're kind of seeing her taking all the things that she learned. And, now she's calling the shots. She's not seeking approval. And that we were able to validate. And it's such a great feeling because it feels validated.
Right. That's great. Like you said, with wisdom, right, you get to make certain choices and get to the point where you feel like you're ready to do that. Okay. So based on the report and those things that we were highlighting, what do you think the important next steps are? What do we all need to collectively do? And what are you guys at NNABI doing?
Yeah, I love that because that's part of our report. And that's one of the things that at the end of the report we call out, because this is something that if you are in this space, if you're a woman, if you work with women in this age range, it's really important that you know and that you help build towards a better place and a better future. We dream about a time where every woman going into, 35 plus knows that they are going into their perimenopause journey and what to expect and what to do, and being able to have the resources to make the right decisions. But in the report, really, because we are a small company. We are just two voices in this space that we hope we can keep building awareness, but we need the help of everyone involved, tangentially even with women in this age range. So the first one is naming it. So we talk about name it, because when you are feeling that you're going crazy, that something's not right, and you don't have a word for it, it drives you crazy. Yeah. So really helping women understand that this is perimenopause, that is biology, that it's absolutely natural, and having a word for it that is just the very first step and the most important, really having this language applied to a very specific experience that women are going through, so they don't feel that they are broken or that there's something wrong with them. So that's the first one. Then really mapping it, ending the scavenger hunt for women. And I just talked about that, just like women piecemealing things as solutions and chasing symptoms, and really, really having these very clear research-backed framework that is helping support women through this stage. So that's really, really important. And then really sharing the load, because as EJ was just saying, this is something that affects 50 million women in the US between ages 35 and 55. It's a lot of women. 4 in 10 are breadwinners. So they are carrying a lot already. And then on top of that, you put perimenopause and all the things that come with it. And it's a lot. So it's really, and this is a call for workplaces, for doctors, for just people, really, just like friends, family, really acknowledging that this is what happens, and then being able to share that load with women, because we cannot expect women to do all the work. So really just like being able to have that support and that framework in different places where she performs to be able to get what she needs from each. So those are the things that, as we were going through the information and the data that we got, felt like the most urgent just to call out. There are other things, but we believe these are the key stepping stones to changing the conversation around perimenopause.
Yeah, and also how NNABI is contributing to this so that we have more people understand what this is and help themselves. We believe in thriving, not surviving. We don't believe in just pushing things through just because that's what we're told. We believe that, again, the driving force of this woman in perimenopause, for the amount of responsibility and roles that she's playing, we believe in her, and we want to make sure we are supporting all the ways that we can. And that starts with education, first thing first. Because as Marina said, we cannot fix what we can't name. So how do we make sure that we start there? But also in the very beginning of the conversation, I say it's not a black and white. There's no like one test and saying, oh, welcome to perimenopause. So it all starts knowing the symptoms. And this is where we need to talk more about educating the symptoms. But also, how do we make sure that this becomes a part of the conversation that people feel more comfortable talking about, connecting to something more than just like my life, me aging? And then also, how do we provide something from a extra solution perspective? So for NNABI, we have a doctor-formulated botanical supplement that's made specific for women in perimenopause. That's our way of contribution. This category, a few years ago, again, it was not really a conversation, but now, thankfully, we are talking about it. Our way of contribution, there are many people are jumping in to help all of us, the women. And NNABI's contribution is that, we bring something credible and that is doctor-formulated, and so that we are trying to get into this woman's daily wellness care so that it's accessible and is something that's so calculated and validated for this particular stage for her body. And we want to make sure that there is something like that she can consider if she opens to consider. There are many other ways. We want the world that she has more options than just one thing. And it's never like one or the other to either, because we realize that now that we've been doing a lot of talking to doctors and their customers and patients, and there are more of holistic approach that people are striving for and then they are preferring, because they know that perimenopause, we're still menstruating. We still have very much hormones. They're just a little wacky.
Yeah.
So how do we do more than one thing? And we'll be the first one to tell people, yeah, you can consider our solution, but you have to do many other things, because that's the only way that you will help yourself. That what used to work for you in your 20s are just not going to cut it in 40. That's just what it is. So
Right.
How do we help all of us to unlearn, which is really hard to do, and then relearn and learn again about the ways that we can take care of ourselves for another next decade or so? Then we get into the menopause and then postmenopause, which is other very important stages of our lives.
Very important.
So that becomes bone and hearth. And so there's a lot of things. I think that we just need to know that our bodies keep changing, and how do we support? So that's why we're here. And sense of community that we're bringing as NNABI, again, having a very clear conversation so there's no confusion about what stage someone is and what are the things that she should be considering. We want to allow her to have more options so that she can choose. She can choose how she wishes to take care of herself. And that's the world that we imagine. And this is our passion. And this is how we are actually benefiting, by the way, by doing this. So it started with us, but then we realized that along the way, a lot of people like us are coming out and saying, whoa, this is something that I could see benefiting myself. So here we are. And so, I mean, Claire, we met like many, many years ago.
Yes. Yeah. It was really the idea, right? That you were, how to create this solution that is going to serve women. And I love that you brought it to fruition and that you're coupling that with the education piece, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's great about this section of the industry as well. As companies are coming into the perimenopause and menopause space, most of them, the good ones, right, are doing that educational piece too, because really that's half of the equation. You have a solution, but you have to have people understand what's happening to them. And then, as you said, EJ, giving them choices that we didn't have choices before, right? And so knowing that there's different things now that women can talk to their doctors about, that they can talk with a nutritionist about, they can talk with their exercise experts about, to kind of think, what's the right mix for them? And I love the 3 highlights that you gave from the report, Marina, about naming it, mapping it. And I was going to say one of the tools that we've talked about before on the podcast is we have a checklist, a symptom checklist, all of the 30 plus things that are associated with menopause, but that women can check that they're having it. What's the duration? What's the intensity? And that's a way for them to map, right? Oh, these are the things that are happening to me. And then have that conversation with your clinician about, oh, here's something we need to do. And I also love the share the load, right? That it's a life stage for women, but impacts everybody that we encounter, from our families to our coworkers, right? If we're going through and having these symptoms that can be, like I said, sometimes very debilitating, it's really important that people know.
Yeah.
And that women speak up. And like I said, we don't have to keep struggling through it. We can ask for help and say, hey, I'm not multitasking as well as I used to. Someone else is going to need to do this part, right? Or I need to see a doctor about this stuff, or I need to have access to mental health care, or whatever that is. So I love that you highlighted those 3 specific areas. And those are things that all of us can do, right? Whatever role we play in our communities, in our society, in our workplace, those 3 things about naming it and helping people map it and then sharing the load are great calls to action, I think. So thank you guys for doing all of that work and for sharing it with all of us so we can all use it to strengthen how do we help and support women at this stage of life. That's really, really important and critical. So I know we're almost out of time, so I want to talk about what's one takeaway that you hope people listening to this podcast take away from what our conversation was about today. So EJ, why don't you go first?
I'll say, while not everything is perimenopause, it's also inevitable that perimenopause is an underlying issue for a lot of the things that we're going through that makes us feel off. So don't brush off, don't ignore it, acknowledge it. And there are ways that we can help ourselves on a day-to-day. So don't ignore it. If you're feeling off, that's a really good indicator. So start there.
Yeah. I would say that's the very first step. It's so critical that you tune in, understand what's going on with your body and do something about it because it's not right. And just speaking with your doctor, that's the very first step. I would also like to say, because this is something that we come across, again, maybe by the nature of what we're doing with NNABI and with Peri Essential 5, but it's just like there's no one solution in perimenopause. Don't look for it. There's no quick fix. This is a transition. It's a recalibration of your whole body, physical and emotional. You need to treat it as that. It's important. You need to really have a toolkit. So there's no one single thing that will solve all your issues in perimenopause. You really need the support of your physician. You need the support of medication if you choose to do hormones or SSRIs or birth control or supplements, whatever you choose. You need to move your body. You need to manage stress. You need to get your sleep. That's the most sleep. I'd say like that's the most important critical. It has helped me a lot. So there's all these different things that you need to be looking at and really thinking about how to optimize those to start feeling better. So no single solution, no quick fix. You need to go at it and just really work with different things to start feeling better and be healthier as well.
That's great advice. And you're absolutely right. And knowing what those tools are for our toolkit are so important. So thank you so much, EJ and Marina, for sharing your time and your experience. And as I mentioned, we'll include additional information and a link to NNABI and to the Peri Power Report 2025 with the notes for this episode. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. And please don't forget to subscribe to the Positive Podcast so you never miss an episode. And thank you again to my guests, EJ Kim and Marina Penn, co-founders of NNABI. And thank you for listening. We hope you'll tune in to another episode of The Positive Pause.